Hi, it's Lisa from Juju Crafts. This is video 3 of 3 for an everyday crafter's guide on making your own resin embellishments at home. This video is going to be on actually pouring the resin and adding some color to resins and some other uses for the resin that you've bought in case you don't want to spend it just on molds. So hang on, we're going to be altering some things around and moving. It's going to be probably another little choppy video where I start and stop a few times to change things out for you. But hang in there and we'll see a few things you can do with resins. Okay, there are basically two types of resin that you can buy as just a basic everyday crafter. And one of those is going to be your clear resins, and the other one is going to be your fast-acting resin that sets really fast in like 5, 10, 15 minutes. First, just to talk for a second about the clear resins, you will have 6 to 72 hours before it is dry and set and ready to use. However, it is beautiful. It's clear and just lovely, and you can do all kinds of wonderful things with it. If you are going to be doing jewelry and setting bezels for your necklaces and making maybe some heirlooms with family photos in the bezels, you know, get a little bit more jewelry grade. One of the more inexpensive jewelry grade resins is Ice Resin by Susan Leonard Casimir, and it's a great resin. I love it. This one's a little bit older, so the packaging will look different if you're looking for it now because she has hooked up with Ranger. This type is sort of fun because it is a small amount, so you can get this little bit amount probably for $7 to $10. The way that you would use it is you would clip off these two bottom things, try to keep them about even, and then you would just push this down. It's going to push out both fluids at the same time, so it's going to measure it for you. And then you have a little bit in your mixing cup, and you're all ready to go. You pour it in, it goes. The other type, and she also makes hers in these box types too, are the big bottles that you will mix. These look very similar to the fast-acting resins, where you have two large bottles. Basically, this is the same thing. You got two different types, and you just have to put equal amounts in your little cups. Now for the fast-acting resins, you will do the same thing, but you have an extra step with the clear casting resins, and it explains it to you in the instructions, so read those. But what you will do is you will have, say, a cup of your resin. These are 1 ounce cups, by the way. They're like medicine cups, and they have measurements on them in different types. There's milliliters and ounces and teaspoons all around it. You can get these cups from Amazon, and if you were going to do a lot of resin casting, I would advise you to do that because you can get 100 of them for less than $5. And they're, you know, basically for the most part, you can reuse them a couple of times, but sometimes they get too gunky to use. But if you think you're going to be doing some resin, go on and spend that $5 and get you a bunch to put back. Plus, you have them for other things too. Medicine for the kids, you know. But if you are going to buy these from Amazon or from anywhere else, and you're going to look them up, what you would search is 1 ounce measuring cup. 1 ounce measuring cup. Sometimes it will have the word unsterile on it, I guess in case they were using it for medicinal reasons, because they're not sterile, you know, everybody can just reach and touch them. 1 ounce measuring cups, 1 ounce unsterile cups, 1 ounce graduated measuring cups, 1 ounce plastic measuring cups. And, you know, on Amazon, always look up things with lots of different words, because sometimes you're going to find the exact item for less just by changing a word in your search. For instance, this epoxy resin, and it works the same with every one of the things I have bought. If I type in clear casting epoxy resin, this is probably the only resin I'm going to see. If I just type in resin, I'm going to get a ton. That's how I found the smooth-on resin the first time, and I actually almost prefer it because you can sometimes get a lot more for several dollars cheaper. Another thing that happened to me was when I was looking for some clear resin, I was going to get this, and I happened to just leave off a word. I don't remember what it was. I think it was just I typed in epoxy instead of resin, and I saw this. It doesn't say anything about molding. It doesn't say anything about resin. It's just Envirotex Light Pour On High Gloss Finish, and it you know, on the instruction part it just said hardens, you know, in 24 hours, blah blah blah, and it was 32 ounces of this. 32. And I thought, I wonder if it's the same. I went on, did a little close-up, and it says contains epoxy resin. So for 32 ounces of it, it was only $5 more than this almost $20 box that was only 16 ounces. So I thought, well, what the heck, I'll just give it a try, and if it's not as good, I will just use it to pour on a high gloss finish on something. And I got this about a year ago, and I actually just tried it last night just to see, so I could let you know. It's exactly the same. It worked just as well in my molds. It came out exactly the same. Even the bottle looks identical. It's just a bigger bottle. I'll show you one of the bottles here in the clear casting resin. Here's this little 8-ounce bottle that's in the pound box. And here is the 16-ounce bottle that's in the 32-ounce box. Like I said, $5 difference. So if you think you're going to be doing a lot of resin, maybe look for this one. Dun, 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 dun. Envirotex Light Pour on High Gloss Finish. Now what I will tell you though is make sure that you're finding as many places on Amazon that sells this as you can. For instance, this exact item, exact brand, exact amount, 32 ounces, was just $5 more. It was like, I think it was like 20, 25 bucks, somewhere in there. And this exact box was also $70 from a different seller with shipping on it. So it would have been almost $80. And I got it for less than 25. So please double check and type in things a different way, look at things a different way, add them to your cart, and then take out the ones you don't want until you find the cheapest one. That's the best thing I can tell you. That's how I found a lot of products a lot cheaper. Even Sizzix dyes. Hey, Amazon can do some good stuff. I'm not going to pour out the clear epoxy resin for you and show you how to mold it because it is almost exactly the same as the short acting, and I want to be able to show you how it works. Because on this, after you pour it, you just set it in your room, in a room where nothing can touch it, no animals, no children, and you just let it set for, like I said, anywhere from 6 to 72 hours, all depending on the type and depending on what temperature it is, that sort of thing. On any resin, you're going to have the same amount, if it's a 1-to-1 resin, the same amount of resin as you do hardener. So if I have 1 ounce of resin and 1 ounce of hardener, I'm just going to pour them together, mix them together, and pour it in my mold. Except for the clear resin, you have one additional step. And I think it's mostly to help get rid of air bubbles and to help it mix better. I'm not really sure. I just follow the instructions and it does work better. And that is to have an extra little cup, and you slowly pour it back and forth a couple times. You do have a lot of time to work with this resin. Like I said, it doesn't harden up for a long time. So make sure you get it as mixed as you can, as not as many air bubbles as you can, because it's going to be clear and you're going to see those air bubbles. So let's say you got the clear resin, and you can make your molds with them, and they're beautiful. You can paint them. You can add pigments. They do make pigments for them. That is specifically for pigment resin. So it's only for resins, and those pigments will give you the most brilliant colors that you're going to get. I'm going to show you how to do a few colors at home with things that you might have just out of your crafting stuff. The problem is that it's not made for resin, and sometimes you have to be careful on how much you put in, and you might have some reactions you don't expect, and I'll show you one of those. But do buy the pigment resins if you have the money and if you want the bright colors. Okay, if you're working with the clear resin, and there's a few other things you can do with it besides just making your molds. One is, if you get that $5 or $6 bottle of glossy accents and you like to make the bottle caps, little charms to go on your projects, to use your glossy accents can get quite expensive on that type of project. And so in this case, Mary from Mini Album Swaps, Mini Album Scraps.me sent me these wonderful little bottle caps as just a happy mail, and so I'm getting ready to use them on a project that I'm working on for Halloween. So I put Edgar Allan Poe in there, which was another happy mail from Kirsten, and instead of using my glossy accents or buying those specialty glass domes that you can get for the bottle caps, I just poured some resin in there, and now it's all sealed, it's shiny, it's got a glass-like finish on it, super hard, and it's just perfect. I love it. Hi, Edgar. Hi, Lisa. Anyway, okay, so I like that picture of Edgar better than this one. This one, he looks like a little dweeb, doesn't he? Anyway, I guess that's Edgar. I don't know. I just assume it's, yeah, okay. Anyway. Another thing that you can do with your clear resin is, always have a little project ready that you can use a little extra on in case you fill up your molds and you have some left in your box. Or in your little cup, because I hate to throw anything away, and I think most of you are the same. Most crafters like to be frugal because it gets a little expensive. That's why we hide it in the garage and wait for the husband to leave before we bring it in, huh? Or we sneak the box in that we've ordered under our armpit so they can't see it when we walk in. Anyway, in this case, I had some white clay and rolled it out, stamped it with some staz-on ink, with a fun little stamp. I think it was the French stamp from Stampin' Up. It was an older stamp I've had for a while. And then after I baked it, I just put there was a little bit of resin left in my cup, and I poured it on top, and then I just smoothed it out with one of the sticks. I just run it over until it looks smooth, scraping it off. And once it dried, it gave a nice sheen and it gave a nice protection to my clay piece. Another thing that's fun to do is to just put it on any kind of print. This was an old Louis L'Amour book that had got a lot of water damage to it, so I'm using the pages for other things. And whenever you add your resin, you can put it on both sides if you want. It gives a great texture background, adds a nice protectant over it. Then you can alcohol ink it a little bit. You can add all kinds of more textures on top that you couldn't have done because it's a fragile paper. Don't make the mistake though of thinking because you added resin to this paper that it's going to be somehow invincible. It's not. It still tears very easily. See? But it will protect the surface, and of course your inks won't, your print won't get all messed up. If you accidentally dribble some paint on it, you can wipe it up. You can lightly touch it with alcohol inks around it and give it a little bit more texture. And of course it feels like glass. It feels so good. Anyway, that's a couple ideas. Now if you're using the clear resin, there's probably a high chance you want it to be clear. So of course you can paint it. It's always recommended on any resin pieces to paint it as soon as you can after you've molded it. Because it actually has a little bit of a, I guess, a tack left to it, or a tooth, I guess I might want to say, and it helps hold the paint on. After the resin's hardened for a long time, it doesn't have quite that tooth, and it's going to be more easy to scrape off your paint, and so you might want to consider getting an acrylic sealer if it's going to be a project you've spent a lot of time on. A great fun thing about clear resins is that you can add glitter. I don't know if you can see this on the camera. Can you see all the little glitters in that one? Sorry about my hands, I've been painting and inking. Look at all that little glitter in there. But just mix in glitter however much you want with your resin, and you just pour it in your molds and you have some glitter inside it. You sort of have to be careful. If you put too much, you're going to end up with it all going to the surface and then it looks a little funky. But if you just use the lighter weight glitter that you can, it looks better. Another thing you can do with clear resin is, say if you have big chunky glitter or pieces of I call it glass glitter or German glitter, and it's that big chunky glitter. If you use it and then you just drip some resin over top of it and it hardens, it just makes it like a clear bezel or almost like a druzy. So there's just some fun ideas of what to do with your clear resin other than just making a mold. Now for the fast drying resins. Fast drying resins will almost always be opaque. As far as I know, there are no fast drying clear resins whatsoever. So if you're getting fast drying, you can expect it to come out sort of white in some form or another. Staz-on does make some fairly inexpensive resins that you can buy that come out in black and amber and those sort of things without adding any colorants to them. I have not used those. I have looked at some of the feedback. It seems like most of them are pretty positive except for on the really deep black one. The only thing that I saw that was bad was that most people said you have to work with small amounts and work super fast, even faster than you do with this. If you watch the video where I made the molds and I used the Staz-on liquid silicone, Staz-on has a ton of products for mold making and for casting with resins. And they even make this stuff, and it's pretty inexpensive. It's about the same price where you can make your own facial appliances out of the silicone, all the fun face-off kind of stuff. That's really tempting. I think it's called like Staz-on dragon skin or something like that. But anyway, it's all known by this number. If you go to Staz-on's website, there are charts and listings of the different products. Their boxes look very similar. So if you're looking for a specific box, don't. Look at the product name, look at what product you're getting. For instance, the silicone that I used yesterday to make the mold, see this picture? This is the resin. This is the plastic resin. But look at the picture for the silicone. Oh yeah, about the same, almost exactly the same. I wish they wouldn't have done that, but I guess it was easier for them. Also, they have many products that do many similar things, but they're a little bit different. For instance, I like this OOM0030 to make my rubber silicone molds. There is also an OOM0025 that makes great molds. It'll be a different color, like this one was a lilac, but from what I understand, the only difference is that the 25 actually sets up a little faster. It all depends on how particular you are. If you want more time to work with your mold to make sure it's sitting right, then you'd want the 30. Then there's some that sets even longer than this. There's some that's made especially for bigger molds, some it's made especially for 3D molds. Just look on their site to find what you want. For me, and for just basic silicone molds for liquid, this was my favorite so far. Now, okay, let's talk about these fast-setting resins. If you get your box, I'll show you what you can expect to get in a box, whether it's this one or this one. If you buy the staz-on, you get these gigantic pint-size thingies. So these come for about the same price. You have your choice of getting a pound of amazing cast resin, or I guess almost 2 pounds. 1.9 pounds of staz-on. They were almost the same price, like $1 or $2 apart. So I actually am moving over to staz-on. I've always used just this amazing cast, but after trying staz-on, yeah, I'm starting to go this way. Cheaper, products are great, more product variety, and I'm just in love with it. Plus, they make a ton of videos that I just found yesterday, which of course I should have looked at before, on how to make all kinds of different stuff out there. So anyway, you buy the staz-on, you're going to get bottles like this. And if you buy the amazing cast resin, you're going to get these bottles. Okay, now let's say you bought your first thing of resin. And if you get this kind, here's what you can expect to be in the box. You can expect 1 or 2 of these little medicine cups I talked to you about getting a bunch of those for $5 on Amazon. And you can expect your resin. You can expect your catalyst hardener. You can expect 1 or 2, all depending on how cheap they are, sticks to stir your resin with, and an instruction pack along with your handy dandy box. Okay, the instructions are for humor because we're in America and we sue everybody. So I will go over this so nobody sue me saying my video didn't tell them to be safe. Don't pour it in your eyes. Don't pour the resin in your eyes. Don't do that. It'll make you blind. If you do, this tells you what to do. Let's read it first. Once you mix your resin, or even if you don't mix it, don't drink it. Don't drink the resin. Don't drink it. Okay? Remember, don't drink it. Don't pour it in your eyes. Don't sit around and inhale it. It's not a drug. It's bad for you. Don't do that. Don't pour it on your carpet or your clothes. It's not going to come out. Don't spill it on you. I think I told you a story about gluing it to my skin. I had to rip my skin off. It will dry fast. It will dry to your skin. It's not fun. Don't do it. These things, don't eat it, don't drink it, don't pour it in your eyes, don't inhale it, and don't stick it on your body or pets or children. Don't pour it in a water source. Okay, now we all know how to be safe. Probably, if I read this thoroughly, it would probably say use protective eyewear. And I'm sure it will 100% say that it is causing cancer in the state of California. Because everything, including my Christmas tree, causes cancer in the state of California. There was a big paper on it in the box. Alright, now, so I've got my mold. This is what I'm going to use this time. This was actually a fondant mold. Amazon. Yay, it's zombies. And it also has a little brick over here. Fondant mold, it was silicone, works just fine with resin. Like I said, be careful if you get a mold that says rubber and it doesn't say silicone. If it says just rubber, you may want to only use it with clay. You may only get 1 chance to use it with silicone, with epoxy. If you do, and it does mess up, here's a tip. if you use a mold and you love that mold and you ruin that mold, use that one epoxy mold that you got out of it before you ruined it and make another mold out of it. Yes, you can use a piece of resin to make a mold out of. So if you ruin your mold, go get you some staz-on, make yourself another silicone mold. So even though it's a sad situation, you can make it happy. I do not measure. I do not know how much it will take for each one of these. I have no clue. You can see where I have made some of these before. I have made and poured them, and I've had a little bit left in a cup. And I didn't want to waste that because, you know, hoarders, that's what we are. We don't want to waste stuff either. So I just poured in a little mold for the next time. Resin does stick to itself if you're using the same type of resin, obviously. So just pour it in a little mold for the next time you're going to make one. The one I'm going to show you how to make is really fast and really easy. We're going to do this little guy right here. And he comes out like this. He's just a little half guy. You can paint him however you want. Whenever they first come out, you can take a little drill thing. Well, even if they don't, you can always take a little Dremel and drill a hole in it if you want to turn it into a necklace or a charm. See how easy it is to paint? It's my little zombie. Oh, you can't see him very good. He's glaring at you. No, don't glare. Don't glare. Ha 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 ha. There he is. Okay. Anyway, so when he came out, I just painted him black and I used some alcohol inks and just dabbed it on his hands. It took me all of 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I timed it to paint him. I just dabbed some lettuce green alcohol ink and I painted the rest where I wanted black. I took a little bit of black paint and rubbed it over his face. And then I took a piece of paper towel and got it wet and I just wiped his face off so there was still some black left in his eyes. And then I took a Krylon pen, or you could use some Rub and Buff, put it on my finger and just rubbed it on to give him a little sheen. That's a zombie. That's how easy it is. You're going to like these. Okay, now, for this zombie, like I said, I really don't know how much it takes. I think the last time I did about 10 and I had a little left over, so I'm still going to do that again so I can show you how just to pour it in there. Which one shall we use? Let's use the Amazing Cast. So, when you start, if you want to feel safer, use 2 cups, one for the catalyst and one for the resin, and then mix them together in a cup. If I spill it, I know I have a little big mess to clean up. So we'll just do it this way. I'm filling this up on the milliliter side where it says 5, and I always dribble. I'm a horrible little dribbler. Probably shouldn't do it over my mold. Okay, always put your lid back on, because if you have a least little bit of a clumsy gene like I do, you're just going to hate yourself and you're going to spill it and knock it over and it's going to be on everything, and trust me, you'll just want to pour the hardener on it just because you can't get it up anyway. Okay, so I got that up to 5. Now I'm just going to add enough to make it up to the 10 milliliters. Dun, 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 dun. Ooh, and you can actually, probably not on the camera too much, you can actually see a little bit of a difference in the viscosity of the two fluids because they're a little different. It's almost like mixing salt water and fresh water. You can see a little bit of a swirly going on in there. Now I'm going to put my fingers underneath this cup for one reason. As I'm stirring and mixing, if I start feeling that start to get warm, that fluid, I know I got a very, very limited time that it's getting ready to start getting hard on me, so I need to pour it out really fast. In the meantime, see how it's getting cloudy? Okay, that means it's not mixed good. Okay, so it'll start to clear up more and more. Oh yeah, there it goes. I don't know if you can see it. It's not super cloudy, it's just a little bit. You want to not do this blop blop motion because you want to try to not get air bubbles in there. Okay, I can actually feel a tiny, tiny bit of warmth starting to come up. That means the catalyst and the resin are starting to work together. And it's not super warm up, but I need to go on and start getting ready to pour it so it doesn't get hard on me. So my table is not flat. I would recommend you get the flattest surface you can and then just pour it in your mold. Okay, I can see now it's not over his feet. Pour it in a little bit more. A little bit more. Just a little bit more. Okay. Make sure it's in all the parts, especially the little parts. It's always good to have like a needle or a toothpick around so you can scoot your resin around, especially if it's a fine detail one. And just a little bit more. Now see, I got a little bit left in my cup. Just a little bit. I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to pour it over here in a mold that I know I'll want some other time. Right on top of that other resin that I put in there last time. When I want to be really frugal, I'll just scrape out that last drip and put it in there. Now do not throw away these cups, because the resin will get hard and it's super easy to pull out. While we're waiting, right now it is 1:38 a.m. I'm a night owl. So just so you can get an idea of how long it takes. A thicker mold will take less time than a thin mold. If I was molding a very thin piece, like say this Martha Stewart leaf, and I was also molding this owl, you can see his eyes go down in there quite a ways compared to the leaf anyway. This owl is going to finish hardening way before this leaf does, even if I pour them at exactly the same time. The thicker resin acts, the catalyst in it acts faster. I don't know why, I guess maybe more substance, whatever. It'll get hot faster, it'll turn white faster, it'll get hard faster. Actually, this one might even be almost done before this one even starts turning white, just so that you're prepared. The thinner pieces take longer. Look at the magic happening. Look at it. It's already starting to turn white. It's already starting to get hard. So that means we know we've got some good resin going on. We stirred it right. We got it going on. Hey, that's just perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So anyway, I'm going to pause it for a little bit until it gets totally white. Okay, so it's been exactly 10 minutes. You don't have to wait exactly 10 minutes. You can touch it and feel it and see how it's going, and it's already hard. If you look over here, this is still not even hard yet because it's so thin. So it's going to take a while longer to get it to harden up than it will this one. I did go on and start painting another piece because I want to show you a little something on how to paint it after you were done. Whenever you first start getting these out, just pull the mold away. You can see how easy it starts to come away from the side. Watch this here. See? Look at that. Yeah, I always just go around the edges just to make sure. Every now and then, especially see right there where that's a really thin piece on the hand, if you have to be really careful if you have a separate piece that's thinner. You can still see that is super soft. I mean, it'll move. It'll be fine. I can go and take it out because it's not liquid. But if you have a piece that has varying thicknesses, you'll want to make sure your little thin pieces are hard too, or at least white and getting close to being hard. The good thing about pulling them out when they're soft like this is that you can move them and lean them against something. So if I wanted his hand to be raised up, I could push it up like this and then let it harden like that, hold something on it, and when it hardened it would be up. In this case I don't, so I'm let it go down. This is also the time that you would want to start painting it because the tooth is on it and it'll make the paint stay on it easier. It would also be a time if you had like a little hand drill, if you wanted to add a little eyelet or eye pin to it, where you would go on and put that in. So this is the time to do all your fast work while it's still, before it gets super, super, super hard. You can still do stuff after it's hard, but you will not be able to bend or mold because if you try to do that, you're just going to break it. Okay, to add color to them after they've already dried and while it's not in liquid form anymore, of course you can just paint them. This was a white piece of resin. Just paintbrush. I would use a paintbrush you don't like so much just because you're going to have to jab it into all the little details to try to get the paint in there just right. And you know, just any kind of gesso works. With gesso, gesso, I don't know. I've heard people calling it all different ways, so I'm just going to call it whichever comes up at the moment. But just paint it, and then that way it only takes 1 or 2 coats. If you use just a basic paint, sometimes it doesn't go over very well, like on this one. You know, it's, I don't know if you can tell, but it's, you can still see some of the white through it even after 2 coats. And so with a basic paint, you might have to go over it as many as 3 or 4 times to get a good covering on it. And then, say if you want to use some of your other products, like here for this, my little finger. I wonder why it's all the way over here. Let's see if we can get this over here a little bit better. My little finger guy here. How come he doesn't focus? Ah, there we go. That's just alcohol inks on that one. And just put them directly on it, unless you have a reason to spritz or spray. So, for instance, I might just goof around here on this one. And where did I put my towel? Like I said, I love these mats just because you can simply let stuff go over them and rinse them up later. You might want blotches and, you know, bloodies and goopies or whatever. If you just want a big blotch, just drip it on there. And then you can just rub it in with your foam or whatever. I have purple on here. Purple staz-on ink, so you can see that really blended in nice. Now it has a really yucky little print. That's all right. And then I'll just keep going by with alcohol inks and rubbing them in and getting it to colors I want all the way around. So you have alcohol inks, you have paint. Oh, and after you paint, you can change your paint up a little bit. I was mentioning to Mary, one of the things I use especially to get a nice steampunk look is, yeah, you can use the Resin buffs and the Inca Golds, but I use these Krylon leafing pens, and they come in gold, copper, silver, brass. And I've often heard people say, even though I do, I've heard a lot of people say steampunk shouldn't have silver in it, but I do. I try to keep mostly to the coppers and brass colors. But you can apply it directly. You shake the pen, or to me, to get the best effect that I like, I just put some on my finger, get a bunch out there like that, just dabbing it on there and pushing, maybe even pushing the nib down if I have to, and get some on my finger, or if you have gloves, and then you just rub it on, just wherever you want it, just like that, just touching, barely touching. Using it like a rub and buff, I guess, but it's Krylon and it's leafing, and I think that actually looks pretty good when it's like that, because it gives a little bit more detail. You can put more on it if you want, or less, or sometimes less is more and sometimes more is less, unless it comes to chocolate and craft supplies. Then more is just more and amazing. Alright, see how cool that one is? I like it. Now on the rub and buff, you would use it the same way. You've got your piece gestoed. If you don't put something on it to give it a tooth, a lot of things won't stay. The Krylon pens will stay. The rub and buff will eventually wear off pretty quickly. And you cannot use distress paints. I mean distress inks, obviously, because distress inks are water-based. But on the Inca Gold, same thing. Just put a little bit on your finger. Just touch your highlighted points. That's not coming off very well. Squirt it with a little water. A lot of people say don't do that because then you get mold, and you do. Then you just wipe that off too and just keep using it. So it's alright. I've probably had these same Inca Golds for 5 or 6 years just because I don't let anything hinder me. I will make it work. Got a little bit more moist, and maybe put some to the highlights, like a little bit to the forehead. If you put on purples and things for Halloween, or blue for oceany, or you don't have to put on that much. And you can always rub a little bit off if you want to. There you go, give her some highlights. And it makes your resin piece look really cool, really shiny. You can also continue to paint it, put acrylic sealer on it. You can put a clear gloss on it. You can add glitter glues and all kinds of things. And then, of course, if you use anything like it that's going to chip off, you'll need to put an acrylic sealer. I've heard some people say they use fingernail polish, clear fingernail polish. And I guess that's okay if you don't really want it to last, but just like fingernail polish does on your fingernails, it eventually wears off. Alright, another option is staz-on inks. And those are always great too, just as a touch-up, sort of like I did the Krylon pen. I better put my lid on that. Anyway, I'll get a little purple. This is just purple, the royal purple. And I'm just barely, this is one of those little brushes, the Tim Holtz foam, or it's just a foam or a piece of sponge, and just barely touch it to try to start giving it a dark. I just want to bring out some of the veins on his forehead. Looks like I'm almost out of ink. I have to go get my refiller. Just dab, 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 dab. And you can start to see the veins popping out. So you can get some different effects in different ways. Okay, and that's your basics on just coloring after you have already got it hard. And I'll be right back with a little bit more stuff on changing some of the color of your resin before it gets hard. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about adding some color to the resin before you pour it while it's still a liquid. I haven't tried too many things. I haven't tried food coloring, mostly because it's water-based, and I've noticed that some things that are water-based can really mess with your resins. But, you know, hey, if you got some extra time and a little extra resin, it's always good to give it a try. Like I mentioned before, pigments that are made for resin, literally called resin pigments, are the best you're going to get. They're going to give you a lot brighter colors than what you see here. They're going to give you the black blacks and the blue blues, you know, the deep blues, and the reddy reds instead of a pink. Especially when you're working with the fast drying resin, because it's automatically white. So anything, any colors that you put in it is going to end up being opaque. The reason, because you're blending it with white. And to me it looks like saltwater taffy. I think it's sort of cool in a way. So another thing you can do, I think I mentioned, well, when we showed that clear butterfly, how it had the translucent glitter in it, how pretty it looks. Not so pretty with the white stuff. I tried a red, white, and silver glitter, and it just looks like a really bad Christmas cookie. So, you know, I really wouldn't go that way. And you almost have to put a little bit of the glitter into your mold before you pour it, because obviously you can't see it once it's inside that white, and that white turns so opaque. So if you sprinkle some glitter in your mold, you will see the glitter more. But like I said, it doesn't really look all that good. It just looks like somebody iced a cookie and stuck it in glitter. So anyway, not my favorite version. But a few things that I have tried that has worked fairly well, I'm going to show you. Before I go any further, though, I wanted to remind you, because I didn't show it before, that these little cups that you mix your resin in, you can reuse them. And to do that, you just use a fingernail or a little sharp thing. Just wait till the resin dries, and then just go in and pry it off. And look at that. Yep, just pops right out there. Or whatever's left, you can just scrape it off. So you can reuse these multiple times. So that way you can save some money. Okay, now, a lot of people, and one of the things I always wanted to do when I first saw resins was to do the dual color resins, because they just look so pretty and they look so much more professional. And there's so much more pain in the butt. This one, like this, where you've got the two colors in one cabochon, or and you can do it, and I have done it, and sometimes it turns out fantastic, and sometimes it's a horrible disaster, and sometimes I mess up just a little bit. This one I actually bought. This was a eBay one. This was one of the first ones that I got. It came in a pack of 3. And this one I could make my molds from, but I have made some that turned out semi-okay. Like these, I made that one. Just all the stuff I'm going to show you now, like that white, is just the white opaque, you know, resin that dries white. And then this is where I added some stuff. If you're going to do a 2-color resin, you have to wait until one color dries or almost dries before you add another layer, because then it happens and it's not pretty and it's all, but anyway, don't do that. So wait for one area to dry before the other one does if you're doing dual colors. This one, if it has a bigger section, it's a lot easier. Like, you know, the face is different. I mean, it's got a bigger area to it than the main, so it was a lot easier to get it a different color. That makes it a lot easier. But if it's really thin and really shallow, like the cabochons, then it's a little harder. I'll give you a few tips of what I've done. And like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, on to do the dual color. So first thing I'm going to do is I want a white hand. See if you can see this up here. I want a white hand, and I want a different color background. Any of these things you're going to do like this, I would, if they're really fine, you're going to have to be really fast and really good to get it all just in there and not over other parts. Because, for instance, you're going to need to put at least a little touch of resin in these ribs here and down this spine, but not on this piece. But you will have to have it here and here. So you pretty much have to use a toothpick and just lay it down and dab it in there in the areas you want. Otherwise, it's going to be over and it's going to not look very professional or very good. That's why I actually use paint or inks more often, just because I have more control over those. But I will show you a little bit, and if I mess it up, I'm just going to pour it full because I get frustrated with stuff like that too easy. Part B, whenever you are adding a colorant, almost always your part B is your catalyst. Add most of your times you're going to add color, do it to part B before you add part A, just because part A is resin and it's a plastic, so it doesn't really like to mix with too many things. So it will mix with your catalyst, so whatever you can get to mix with your catalyst, you can pretty much get to mix with part A. Since I'm just going to do the hand, I'm just going to try to do a smaller amount. And like I said, I want this to be white, because this is going to be my hand. And then if I can get it to go in there right, or even if I can't, I will show you how to wait just a second and then add a different color to the top. A little bit more than I meant to, so maybe we'll just have to use it on something else. Let's see here. The good thing is that the least that you make, If you make a little less, the less you have a few seconds more time of work time, because it doesn't get hard as fast. So I'm going to stir it. Get rid of all those little swirlies. Now it's starting to get a little cloudier on me. And if I can get it all incorporated in there, it'll start to look a little clear again pretty quick. There it goes. It's starting to look a little clear now. Okay, now this hand, as you can tell, it's pretty finely detailed. I'm probably not going to be able to do this because I'm trying to hurry, but I might take it and just drip in some areas. If it's a little bit bigger area that I want white, I like to use these pipettes. They're from Ranger. You can get them in a lot of other places, and that we can just suck a little bit in there and put, and put it in just your spots. And since it is at the point now where it flows, I might can get it to go in there a little bit better. And of course it's going to be a little bit on the outside edges. But you could always take your toothpick or your needle and work it. And then if you got it over before it dries, you can always wipe it out. And sometimes that works out well and sometimes it doesn't. But that's obviously not the best way to do it. But that is probably what most of you are going to do, because that's what I do half the time. Even though I wish I was this perfectionist who just went, oh, I must do this perfectly the first time around. No, I'm not like that. I'm like, yeah, that sucked. Let's try something else. Okay. And then, before I pour my second half, I might go in and touch it up again after it dries. See, where I only poured a little bit, still got working time. So maybe I'll try to put a little bit in these lips. I don't want white lips. Let's just see what we can do with Skeleton Boy. He's going to turn out horrible, but we're going to give him a shot anyway. Get his little head in there. Oh, it's getting warm. Once you feel it getting warm, don't leave your fingers on it too often. I mean, as much as you can help, because your body heat will actually make it go faster as well. Okay. I'm dripping it on off of the needle, because once this gets hard, it's going to be hard to clip it off of there. Sometimes you can, though, if you're really careful and you have a little pair of needles. I mean, little pair of scissors. Okay. If you were really going to do this in a professional way, you would work with pigments and you would work with the long-acting resin to do this, because the long-acting resin will give you time to clean up your mistakes. My short-acting resin, however, does not do that. No, not at all. It doesn't like to wait. Like I said, I'm actually getting more time because I made a little less amount in the cup. Yeah, let's see what happens if we put some over here. Between the lips. Yeah, if you try something you don't like it, you can always paint over it. One good thing about having something white instead of a dark color is that when you do add your alcohol inks, it looks more translucent and brighter. So you have a little bit more brightness and sort of light behind it from the white shining through. It looks like I'm getting a bubble. I better make her teeth white. That would be gross, wouldn't it? Have white lips and black teeth. Gingivitis is the worst because of tooth decay. Let's see here. Okay, it's starting to get hard. You can see in my cup it's starting to fill up there. So I better get my fangs done before it gets hard. If it comes down to wasting a little resin or getting a piece in there right, I'll take getting the piece right anytime. Oh no, I'm getting stringies. It's alright. If I was more careful, I would have made less than what I did. Because yeah, it's pretty... Oh well, it's almost beyond help. One thing also I meant to mention before is that if you see it's going out and you think you might make like a, oh, I don't know, a captured fairy jar, because I've done that before, pour it out on your mat, and then that way you can make like a little river that you can paint. It's going to look more like glass. You can add paint. You can add paint to it to make it light blue. You can draw out a letter if you want, someone's initial, paint over that, and you have a little plastic letter. In that case, it might look sort of gross right now, but once I cut it and shape it the way I want, I'll just have a smooth little thing I can use. Okay, so let's give this a second here to work. Let's see if we can get some of it cleaned off a little bit. There's a lot of white right there. Okay, like I said, this is probably the most tedious part if you wanted to have a two-tone cabochon or a two-tone resin piece. And again, if you're patient and you really want to do it right, go with your clear resins, buy your pigments, and then that way you have a lot of time to work with it and to get it all in its right holes. You could even put some color in it and then actually work on wiping it out if you had to. Like I did this one, but then that way it'd be clear and you wouldn't have so much goop. Okay, we're going to let that sit until it turns white. Actually, I put it in my resin. Okay, I forgot her little drippy right here. Good thing that's still a little wet. I forgot her little drip. That's alright, even if I could always paint it too if I have to. On the clear resin, when you're working with clear resin and you want to add something to it and you do not have the pigment resins, I've used alcohol inks. Don't use too much alcohol ink, like just a couple drops. It will not give you a super duper great color. It'll be sort of muted, but on the clear resin it gives you a much better color than it does on the opaque, because the opaque again looks like saltwater taffy. Only use a couple drops to see how, what it looks like at first, because you might not want it too dark. For about that much, which is about 10 milliliters of your resin, I added four drops, and I got this great color out of the clear. Cute little cupid. Like cute. Like I said, add it to your catalyst first. Your part B, your colored color, your yellow one. The resin is usually the clear. Add it to the catalyst, the part B. Do not add it to part A or you're going to have a hard time mixing it. And the way I found that out was I ended up with chunks of color instead of a color that was blended throughout. That's exactly what happened here too. I had the clear. I added the red to the pretty little chick in there, but guess what? Then I went and I poured the clear on top before waiting 6 hours for her to dry, and so then it just blended all up in there and it's not very pretty at all. So I'm just going to paint it, use it for something else. Now when I added 5 drops, horrible things happened. My resin got to where it didn't want to set right. At 5 drops it still set to where I could use it. However, it no longer was a nice hard piece. This is the 10-minute resin. Even after 3 or 4 or 5 days, it will never set. It will never get hard. It will always just be this great piece of plastic that bends and molds. Now I can still add it to my projects. By the way, if you're going to add your your resin pieces to projects, use E6000 glue. I have such a hard time with people who use hot glue for everything and then swear by it. Oh, it holds everything. No, it really doesn't. When you're on the hostess end, you put back together a lot of projects that people thought hot glue would hold together. Do not put your metals together with hot glue. It might hold good for a few days. It generally will not completely make it through shipping, and if it does, I can guarantee you as soon as a month or two goes by and somebody picks up that piece and keeps looking at it, pieces are going to fall off. Same thing with your resins. Glue them on with E6000 glue or an industrial glue like that. You can use hot glue, and sometimes you might have a pretty good experience with it, but there's always going to be those times when you want it to be perfect for somebody and they go to open up a present and it's just going to fall off. If you're working with small pieces, and this goes with anything, with your metals or anything like that, if you're working with small pieces and it's going to be hard to place it or it's at an awkward angle, then first of all, put some E6000 on it, and then have your hot glue gun ready and just put just a little dab of hot glue on it just to hold it in place while the E6000 dries, because it can take a while for that to dry. That way your hot glue's holding it in place and you're not sitting there trying to hold it on or trying to prop it up. But yeah, use something good to keep this on your projects with, not just Elmer's and hot glue. Don't do that. Don't do that to the people who are receiving your presents, please. Okay, so it looks like this is going to take a little time because it's so thin. I'm just going to set it aside. Now, remember these? This is the mold that I made in video 2. I mentioned to you how sometimes whenever you're making a mold, the silicone will go underneath your pieces. And sure enough, that's what it did on this one. So you just had to trim. I had to trim it out with some scissors after I took out the pieces. I left this one in so you can see what it looks like. This was that little bitty filigree that I had put in there. And if I push on it from the bottom, ooh, you can still see the shape of the little bitty filigree under there. Okay, so what it is, I have to clean that out. So this is still a little bit taking you back on a follow-up on the mold, but we're going to use it. So what I would do if I wanted this one was I would just tear it out there. On top it's just really thin. And so, let me see, where's my scissors? There they are. So I would just run my scissors up it and just clip it a little bit as I go. Just like that. That way I can see where it's at. Same thing here. See, find out where it is. Run my scissors around just a little bit to help me loosen it up in there a little bit so I can find out where it goes. Then I'm going to pull it out with my finger. Dun, 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 dun. And so see, your original is always just fine. It doesn't stick with the silicone in it. What's on there is where I had it stuck down to the bottom. It's just hot glue. And it'll pull right off of there. If you go to video 2, you'll see why it had hot glue on it. Okay, now that doesn't really look like that's what's in there, but you know what? If you run your resin through there, you're going to get that shape of that little filigree. But if you want to see it all, like I do, because I want to make sure I've got my resin in all of it, I'll just take my scissors along the edge of the shape, and I will just gently, gently clip where the resin wasn't. Like this little bitty top up here, where it just goes just around. And it's a little tedious, but after you get it, it looks good. I actually had to do that with this too because I must not have glued them down tight enough, so this had a thin film of silicone over it as well. And I just went through and just trimmed. Okay. Yeah, so you can see even this thick piece here is still not hard enough yet because I poured it out so thin. Okay. Getting a little tired, so starting to sluggish and slur my words. But okay, so let's make one with color. See, there's the old one. Just clean it out a little bit. There we go, and I can reuse it. Okay, so I'm always, like I said, always have a mold ready in case you over make, so you can pour it into another mold. I'm wanting to add some color, so I'm going to start off with my catalyst first, my part B. Like I said, it's usually part B. It doesn't always say which one's which, actually. You just have to guess, so I always just figure part B is the catalyst. So let's just go with, I like the milliliters for me. I'm going to do a little bit, about 12. So there's about 6, a little over the 5 mark. And I'm going to need to add 6 more. But I want to make this, I don't know, let's make it a raspberry color. This is the Melt Art dyes that you get for, excuse me, can't think, for, UT. The ultra thick embossing enamel. A lot of people like UT for their molds as well. I don't because they break so easily, but some people do like them. I don't know if I had a piece here where I broke one earlier today, but I don't. But on this, you can't use a whole lot, just like any other product. It's not a pigment, and so you want to be careful. This is the black. Don't want the black. That's the onyx. Yeah, don't want that one. I did that one earlier. If you add black to the white, you're going to get this gray, and it's sort of speckled because, like I said, not everything blends with the catalyst. You can see those little speckles in there. That's simply from just adding the Melt Art. Looks pretty cool though. When I did the orange, this is the amber color. I got this bright yellow because it mixed with the white resin, and it looks just like banana taffy. I love banana taffy. Okay, so I want to see what this color Melt Art is. It's a tiger's eye. Let's see what it looks like. So I think I put like 3 or 4 drops in it, was able to handle that. The Melt Art does not fully blend with resin. but I don't mind the speckled look. It almost gives it a little rock look. Okay, so I had about 6 milliliters of catalyst, so I need to put about 6 milliliters of the resin in there when I'm done. But right now it's catalyst. I don't have to rush. This is just a catalyst. It doesn't have the resin part in it, so I can stir it for as long as I want to try to get this as blended as I want, since there's no part A in it. There's only one part of it. Like I said, if I try to add that color to the resin, it's just going to stand blobs. It will literally stand like little blobs, and I will not be able to mix it in. I will still run my resin. I'm still not going to waste my resin. If I do that, I'll just run it through and paint it. But you can see this is still not fully mixing. I don't know if you can tell. It's still got little chunks in it that I will not be able to mix. I have set as long as 20 and 30 minutes trying to mix it to make it completely mix in, and it just doesn't. But it still ends up with a really nice effect. So, find my point E. Okay. So point E, go find my 12 mark. How much do I got in here? Yeah. Okay, here we go. And like I said, a lot of people are not comfortable just pouring directly one-on-one. They like to pour them into 2 separate containers and then add those 2 containers together. And if you are worried about it, definitely do that. Okay, now just like you would have just normal white resin or the quick activating resin, I'm not going to do anything different. I'm just going to stir. Where I do have about 12 milliliters in here, it's probably going to start getting hot fast, so I want to make sure I'm mixing it fast without putting in too many air bubbles. Speaking of air bubbles, I'm going to show you something in a minute. You're going to get to see lots of bubbles. Pretty cool. It's like a magic show. In this case, I'm going to wait until I start to feel my finger get a little bit warm before I pour it in. Not that way. Okay, it's starting to get warm. And once it starts getting warm, it's definitely time to pour it. Okay, this mold actually uses about 12 milliliters. Maybe I'll remember that this time and I won't have to guess next time. If it's not going all the way over to the other side of the mold, I'll use my stick or a needle. Make sure it's in there. I can always clip off extra resin that goes around. So if it goes off around the edges like this, don't worry about it. You can clip it off with your scissors. The main thing is to make sure all your resin gets into all your little corners. Matter of fact, I've probably done trimming on almost half my pieces because I'll overfill a little bit. Okay. I'll pause just for a second while the little pieces of white, they haven't dried yet either. See, they're just now starting to set. You can start to see some color in them. Where they're so thin, it might take a while because most resin pieces are thicker than just a really thin sheet. So we're going to give it some time. If it looks like it's not going fast enough, put it under hot light. Set it in a window with ultraviolet light with the sun shining in. That actually makes resin set up faster. Heat and UV does. So be back in a minute. Well, they're almost hard, so I thought while I just have a minute more, I would show you a couple little things. One is if you take your resin pieces out of their mold right before they get really hard, right before you can go, like right now or maybe a little bit earlier, if you take it out and do it carefully, you're still going to have a great mold, and then you can shape it like I was talking about with the zombie arm. Like you can see, this was a flat mold, and I took it out and I sort of pinched up the wings a little bit, and then I put it in a little bowl with some weight on it so it would stay like that. So then that way when I put it on my piece, it's going to give it more of a 3D effect and it's going to stick off the piece. That's the way I shaped them. On video one where I showed that little resin piece I'd stuck together with E6000, and I had the 2 wings and the little gear. I hadn't finished painting it or anything, but what I had done to get it that shape around my wrist was I had taken the pieces out before they had completely solidified and wrapped them around about where I thought they should be, and then I put them in a cup that sort of fit that, or you can tie a string around it or something just to hold them in that shape while you wait for them to dry and harden completely. Then that way when they do harden completely, they're in that shape. And that's why these are now 3Ds, and we'll, oh, look at all this stuff stuck there. but that's why it will not lay flat ever again. The other day when I made the mold, like I said, I usually throw everything away, but I did sort of fall in love with this little cup. It was the perfect size to make these kind of molds, and it's actually what my niece's betta fish came in from Walmart. But I did just wait for a couple days for this thin sheet of silicone to just completely dry so I can just peel it out. Just so you know, I'm not being totally wasteful with stuff when I throw them away. Just pull it out, throw away the little pieces of silicone, and you have a nice new cup, nice clean cup to work with. So it's easy, just roll it out. It's something you can do while you're watching TV even, or just bored, like, well, not right now, but anyway. Alright, so let's see how these little pieces here turned out. This is the one that I added the melt art in. I would add the melt art in about exactly the same way that I would add alcohol inks in to give me a different color effect to my resin before it dries. Like I said, if you add too much, you're going to end up with a soft piece that never really gets hard. You can still use it. If you add way too much, it'll never dry. So don't add way too much. Be careful. But look how cool. Now, wouldn't that be really cute, like on a teenage girl who was getting ready to go on a vacation, or for her little vacation journal to have a little pink camera? Looks almost like raspberries. I know you can't really see on the video. It's actually a lot darker than it appears. A lot darker pink. And it really does. It looks like you've taken raspberries and put them in cream and sugar. That's what I've always done when I was looking around. Smoosh them up with a fork. Such a pretty, pretty color. Now, let me see if I can turn this down a little bit if it shows anything. Oh, it's brighter. Didn't help, but I'll do it. Okay. Oh, still bright. Alright, well, sorry about that, but it was worth a try. But anyway, that's how you add one color to it. Well, actually, that's why you add two colors to it. That's the way I would do the alcohol inks and the way that I do the melt art. Then that way you can have at least a couple options of adding some color until, like me, since I can't afford any pigment for my resins yet, once I get pigment for my resins, I probably won't be playing around with this stuff. I'll just play around with my pigments. And don't forget, when you do get pigments, to get a lot of primary colors, because then you can mix them and get the colors you want once they dissolve a little bit. So there's one way. Now, I mentioned there are some things you just cannot add to resin. And that would be anything that has a lot of water base. Now, there are some things though that have a little bit of water base that you can still use and get a good effect from, but it might mess with your resin a little bit, but it'll still be usable. I'm not going to mix it. It's exactly the same way. You add it to the catalyst, and that is one thing that most of us have. Acrylic paint. Now, acrylic paint has somehow got something, I don't know if it's the water, I'm guessing it's the water in the resin. It causes a horrendous bubble effect. Actually, I might go on and do it just to show you so you don't freak out if you do it, so you won't think, no, maybe that's worse than what she said. But these I made, these are two separate batches. I added just a drop of orange paint. I wish I could get them where you could see them. Oh, there we go. I added just a drop of orange paint into the resin, and it started bubbling. So see how it's not smooth on the back anymore? It's like booky. These are two separate batches to show you that it will always occur like that. And at least in the amazing resin, the 10-minute resin, it will always bubble. Now, I added a gel paint, which also has a water base. And as a gel base, I figured it'd be the same, and it was, but to the extreme. Look at this back. I mean, it bubbled. Interestingly enough, the front was still good. I could still use it. Isn't that crazy? No, I did, the gel that I used was supposed to be glow in the dark. That's why there's no color. So that's why I went on and painted it. But the face was fine. But for a gel, yeah, that's the effect the back got. It had a bubble explosion. It almost looked like I had put a little bit of vinegar and baking soda. Actually, I won't do it because that's just going to take up too much time. That way you can still get the idea of that. You can do it. You can add a drop of acrylic paint. Just don't be surprised if you add a couple drops and you end up with bubbling all over the back of your piece. Just let it bubble. And then you can trim off what you don't like. In this case, it didn't bubble over the edge, but I'm sure if you added more than a drop or two, it probably would. So that's your other option right there, would be your paint. Okay, let's go back and look at these. See, turning white. If there was anything here I could scrape off, I will. Like I said, right now I'm not actually looking for perfection. I'm just here to show you a technique for whenever you're doing this with not the 10-minute resin when you're doing it with your resin. You can see I went over here and above, but if it was the liquid resin, I'd be working on it and getting out the parts that I didn't like, you know, and scooping them out with a little needle or whatever. So okay, so I got my resin in there. Now let's mix up a different color. So we can see here. Do my part B first. Do the callus so it'll mix in better with it. I don't have too many colors of the melt art that's open right now, so I'll probably just use one that I have. I'm probably going to put too much in it, so that's alright. We'll just try what we got and see how it looks. So part B, and actually let's just use an alcohol ink so you can see how the alcohol ink, since you've already seen how the melt art looks. What color would go good? One thing I haven't tried the Tim Holtz patinas. I wonder if those would be cool. So let's see here. Because it's going to give me a little bit of a funkiness. Well, it's mostly Halloween stuff. Let's just do orange. Let's see here. I'm just going to put a couple of drops. See how much? I forgot. How much do I have in there of the callus? About 5 milliliters. Just put 2 drops in. It's not a whole lot of resin. And just stir it into the callus. And again, since part A is not in there, this is not going to get hard on me. I can stir it for as long as I want to stir it. The alcohol inks do have a smoother effect than the melt art. The melt art has little chunks. This does not. But it does give a lighter color when it's overall, because it is alcohol ink and it's going to get distributed a lot more. So that's just mixed in there pretty good. Looks really smooth, huh? Okay. Hopefully it's going to be dark enough. If not, once you add it together, you might have a little bit of time to add another drop or two, since there's already going to be the callus in it. But if we have to, we will, to give it a darker color. Hopefully. Let's see, I can't see. Like I said, I'm getting sleepy now. Been up too long. Okay. I know a lot of crafters. One thing I've always been impressed by is how many of the crafters in the world that just make fun stuff for their friends and families are usually the people that are staying up late at night, have horrible sleep patterns, have aches and pains, problems here and there. And that's your crafters for the most part. Every now and then you get a normal person in there, but not very often. Okay. Stir it up a little bit more. Alright. It's not getting hot yet. I'm good. Give it just a little bit more. Make sure it's mixed in there good. And like I said, it's going to dry white. So it's always good to get. I wonder, let's try it. Let's just try it in another drop just to see if we can make it darker after we've already added the catalyst and see how good it mixes. If it doesn't mix good, that way you'll know not to do it. Put 2 drops in. Hopefully it'll dry. We'll see if it'll dry. If it doesn't dry, we'll know not to put 4 drops in, 10 milliliters. And that's the best way that you can gauge anything, is just to try it. Oh, it's getting warm now. Feel my finger. It's not hot, but it's getting warm. Better pour. Okay. I really wish I'd have the liquid in there, because that would probably be a fun little cabbage on. Meow. Meow. If you feel really comfortable, you could always get one of those pipettes to squirt it in there if it makes you feel better, so you don't have more control. I have often done this and then it runs back down the cup and runs all over, but don't forget you can always trim it off, so don't let it mess with you if it runs over the edges too much. That's, like I said, that's why when I make my own molds I put a lip on them. It's because my table's got stuff all in it. There we go. So now I'll just let that dry. Got a little bit left in here. Where do I want to put it? I don't know if that's enough to fill the boot. Probably not, but we'll give it a try and see. I might make a little boot. Oh yeah, it's just perfect amount to make a little boot. Da-dun-da-dun. Okay, so I am going to pause this and be right back, and almost finished with the video. Okay, so it actually took more than 10 minutes for this to get hard. It might even could still use another minute, but they are finally getting there. And I think where obviously we added alcohol inks and added more than 2 drops or 3, it's going to take a little longer to get hard, but it is working. So, see, you get the little orange, and again, it's a lot darker to me than it is to you because I got such bright light up here trying to get some light in this area. So let's just see what it starts to look like. Hopefully this worked out good. If not, well, like I said, it does do better with the clear resin whenever you're dyeing it. So hopefully it all comes off together. And where these are not completely dry, they are going to be bendable, so I'm going to have to lay them flat. Dun, 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 dun. It works pretty good. It looks pretty good. Yeah. White teeth and white lips. And then if you want, you know, I would probably take some red paint maybe, or, you know, not necessarily on this one. I sort of like the white. I think it looks pretty cool. I remember how I drug that little bit back through there on the needle. It actually did good. And it made the little white edging on it. Me and this lamp are going to have it out one day. Look how cool that looks. Not too sure. Must have had a little bit of ink or something in there, because it made a dark splotch right there, and I'm not sure what made the dark splotch. Must have had a little piece of lint or something in it. That one turned out pretty fun. Let's try the other ones. The middle guy, this is one I figured would be really, really, really bad, because he had so many little parts. Let's see how he looks. Ho ho ho, he actually turned out pretty cool. Not too shabby at all. Not too shabby at all. Check him out there. Oh yeah. Pretty cool for the little twins. Pretty cool for just jabbing it in as fast as we could before it started to get hard on me. That actually looks pretty cool. I'm impressed. Alright, one last one, the little hand. Let's see how little hand turned out. Oh, he's perfect. He's perfect little hand. Yep. There you go. So that's how you make a 2-color cabochon with resin. And you know what? Clay would be the same way if you wanted to make one out of clay. Don't forget your silicone molds can be used with your clays. And your beeswax, if you use beeswax, or little soap molds, you can use them for that as well. And of course, they always tell you don't use your silicone molds once you've used them for resin for food, but I would. I just wash them out and use them, babies. But then again, too, I have no fear of death at this point in life. Maybe later. Get that. I think he's really cute. I like it. Alright, and I used my little resin, what was left over on this shoe. Let's see how the shoe mold turned out from yesterday that we made. Put it around a little bit. Oh, she's beautiful. She is perfect. It's a little button. Remember, it was a button yesterday. Now it's a mold. Make it any color at any time as I want. Turned out really well. Alright, so there's most of what to do. Now go out and buy you some pigments, some mold making stuff. Get all kinds of fun stuff, and don't forget, if you have extra, find some use for it. That was what was left of the red. Thanks for watching. Again, there's 3 videos to this set, and hopefully I can get some more up, and maybe in the future I'll show you how to make stick pins other than my finger. Like this pretty little owl. Look how cute it is. Let's try to get that one shaded up. This is way cute too. So it's a little stick pin you can use for Halloween or for any time. All kinds of fun stuff out there to do with resin. And don't just stop with this video. There's a lot of them on YouTube. Find some fun stuff and get to crafting.